and it really pissed me off. It pissed my wife off too. But she was more, I think, analytical about it, because she was like, yeah, well, it is early, so maybe people aren't, maybe the word hasn't gotten out yet. Welcome back to Drinking It In. I am your host, Chris Casara. We are here to help you know more and drink better. And today we're talking about the 2025 Generous Pour at the Capital Grille. Now, it's summer, so that means it's time for the Generous Pour. We'll go through this in great detail, so don't worry. Every summer, the Capital Grille does this. They pick 6 wines, generally a rosé, 2 whites, and 3 reds, generally. And they put a program together where you can, as long as you're eating in the restaurant and you're having like an actual entree, for $45 per guest, you get a taste of each wine. And if you want to have more glasses of any of those, you can. Your wine is unlimited. Obviously, this is much more suited for walking to the restaurant, perhaps Ubering like we did. I made the mistake one year of driving. Actually, I think it was the first time we did the Generous Pour, I drove. And it was like, I immediately realized my mistake. So I tasted each wine, but I basically, barely got my money's worth, shall we say. I think even at $45 per person, the price keeps going up each year. It's still an amazing value, because if you think about, if you go out and you're a couple and you have 2 glasses of wine each at the Capital Grille, you're basically there already, more or less. There are some bottles of wine that you can get away with. They have a pretty decent selection of wines that are under $75 or whatever, but the idea that you can taste 6 different wines and go in unlimited, if you said, all right, we tasted all 6, we want a bottle of that Merlot, that's fine. You can do that. So let's get into it. This year, this was called the Icons of the Vine, and they had one wine made. The rosé was made by Randall Graham, who's a legend in California. They had 2 white wines from Rombauer Vineyards, one Sauvignon Blanc and a Chardonnay. And then the reds were actually spread out quite nicely. A lot of times they focus on one winemaker or one producer. This year, the Pinot Noir was from J Vineyards. The Merlot was from Oren Swift. The Advice from John Merlot. And then the Cabernet Sauvignon was the Jason Bench Cabernet from Pallmeyer. Overall, across the board, wines were really good. Let's talk about the rosé. So the rosé, it's called the Language of Yes, and it was really well balanced. It was full-bodied for a rosé, and just burst. You had loads of fruit. Definitely a contender for wine of the event. We went back to it a couple of times. When we get into the whites, we said the Sauvignon Blanc from Rombauer and the Carneros Chardonnay from Rombauer. Now, I've never had the Sauvignon Blanc from Rombauer. It's grapes that are sourced from Sonoma and Napa. They do, I think I said they do a little oak aging on it. And, it was a nice Sauvignon Blanc because it wasn't too sharp, right? There was some soft edges, a little sharpness, right? There was some passion fruit. I got a little melon in there, but overall, a nice wine, had the 1 glass and moved on. The Rombauer Chardonnay, if you're familiar with Rombauer Chardonnay, typically not one of my favorite, because I think what they do is it's just too much oak. This was no exception. It's an enjoyable wine, and what was interesting is that the more I tasted it it was just with bread with butter, right? And having a sip of that afterwards, it turned into this like really deep caramel. I love caramel. The wine is still a bit too oaky, but that sort of pairing and flavor combination really was a cool experience. Didn't go back to the Rombauer Chardonnay after the first pour. Before I shift into the reds, I got to rant a little bit, because even though this was, so again, the Capital Grille runs this during the summer. So it basically started a week ago. I think it's basically they run it July 1st through Labor Day. And normally we don't go this early, but we happen to have the opportunity to go early, and the restaurant was full, but I didn't see the generous pour glasses on anybody's table. And it really pissed me off. It pissed my wife off too. It's but she was more, I think, analytical about it, because she was like, yeah, well, it is early, so maybe people aren't, maybe the word hasn't gotten out yet. But we were also listening to we could hear one of the servers talk about the event when she came to one of the tables, and it was just totally underselling it, right? Oh, we have our wine tasting, you get 2.5 ounces per glass. No. So I think the Capital Grille needs to do a couple of things. They need to sell this hard, right? They do a nice job on social media, but when you go into the restaurant, other than having a beautiful display of the wines at the front, they don't really highlight the value and the experience that you're getting for in this limited time frame. So happy to work with you, Capital. We're not, and I'm not sponsored by the Capital Grille. Although, if you would like any collab opportunities, folks from Capital Grille, send me an email, DrinkinItIn@gmail.com. I'd love to participate. Let's talk about the reds. J Vineyards Pinot Noir, Russian River Valley. So Russian River Valley Pinot Noirs, bigger, bolder, right? Oh, some oak treatment, usually darker than some of the Pinot Noirs that are produced around the world. This one was no different. It had a very black cherry vibe. I got a little cola, but there wasn't any spice, and it was, and the wine was kind of, I don't know, I'm gonna call it a little flat. I typically have not had great experiences with the J Vineyards wines outside of one of their sparkling. They don't speak to me. This wine was no different. Didn't go back for another glass of the Pinot Noir. Now we're getting into the good stuff. The Merlot, Orange Swift, advice from John Merlot. So this one, I think the grapes are sourced from all over California. It didn't have a specific appellation, but it was so velvety and soft. The very dark fruit sweetness. There was some sweetness in there. It had sort of like a pie crust type of vibe to it. And I also got, was this the one I got a bunch of cocoa in? Where are my notes? No, that was the next one. But it was sort of, they describe it in here as like a blackberry pie, and it's a really accurate description. But it wasn't overly sweet, and it was so well balanced that we did go back for, I went back for multiple glasses on this one. And it was definitely a candidate for the wine of the night. Rosé and the Merlot right now are neck and neck, wine of the night. So let's talk about the Pahlmeyer The Bench Cabernet Sauvignon from, was the Jason Bench Cabernet Sauvignon by Pahlmeyer. I haven't had anything from Pahlmeyer Vineyards in the past. These grapes are sourced from Atlas Peak and in Napa Valley. Dark fruit, as you would imagine. Some sweetness and vanilla notes from the barrels, from the oak, the oak aging. But the most fun part about it was at the very end, I got a real snap of like dark chocolate cocoa type of a note, and that really perked me up. This Cabernet was fantastic, right? You could just order. This would be a great bottle to order if you're at the Capital Grille. I don't know what the bottle price would be, but if you were a real Cabernet fan and you were like, hey, I'm not so sure about this generous pour thing, what I would say is go do the generous pour with a couple of people and basically ask for little bits of all the wines and then just keep drinking the Paulmeyer Bench Cabernet. It'll be perfect in that Capital Grille scenario. Another candidate for wine of the night. So, in the end, my favorite wine of the night, oddly enough, was the Rosé. If I had to pick one of the wines to have right now, it would be the language of yes, Rosé. But I would also be very disappointed not to be drinking the Merlot and the Cabernet Sauvignon, so I'd have to grab bottles of those and have them for the next time. So I think in summary, if you go, I think you should take advantage of this. You have a couple of months to plan it out. Not a cheap evening, obviously, but special occasion over the summer. This is always one of our favorite nights out. I think, we might end up doing it again, like as the event comes to a close. It depends. But, I think they always do a great job. Our server, Mark, in the Providence location, we've had him before. Fantastic. Super into the event, right? Like he's a professional. Pouring the wine, discussing it, telling the stories, really, really fantastic. And that's the other thing that, really comes out of this is there's so much background and stories, and they call it the icons of the vine for a reason, because there's a lot of backstory, a lot of history here. Randall Graham basically invented the market for Rhone Valley grapes in California. He's the guy who, he was the original Rhone Ranger, and when you listen to Mark tell the story about that, it was really fun and eye-opening. Yeah, just don't drive yourself there if you're going to do this event. So in the end, you got to do the generous pour. And if you're one of those people, all right, one more rant. There was a gentleman who walked into the Capital Grille, sat down, he had shorts and a hat on, and didn't even take his hat off to eat. Like, are you kidding me, people? Have some respect for the establishment, have some respect for yourself, and don't piss me off while I'm enjoying the generous pour. Hopefully that won't happen the next time. Didn't really piss me off, but I just kind of looked, I was like, the Capital Grille has a dress code. They actually call it out. I'm surprised they let him in. I'm surprised they let him in because he was so casual, but maybe because he had a shirt, a t-shirt on instead of a tank top, they let him slip by. But, come on, people, show some respect. Dress up, get out to the Capital Grille, enjoy the generous pour, and I will see you next time. Cheers with my peach detox tea of the day.